What's up, guys? I'm Uncle Freedom, coming to you on another glorious and well-deserved day off. Actually, my first official real weekend in like 5 weeks. I have been at work pretty much constantly, either at the work, writing videos, filming, or on the range training, touching grass, as the modern generation says. In my day, that was just, I lived outside. But today we're going to take a look at kind of the yang of the video that came out before, which was kind of like picking a red dot and why red dots are important. We're going to talk about weapon mounted lights, specifically low light shooting with a handgun. Not just weapon mounted, but also handheld. So in order to talk, I have a huge passion for low light handheld lights. Light ruins people's day in a very effective manner if you know what you're doing with it. Also keeps you safe. You don't go to jail if you shine a flashlight at people unless it's attached to your gun. But low light matters, right? Like what we pick for this, because I have news for you, it gets dark every single day. And even during the brightest day known to man, I can still find places that are too dark to effectively see. So when we start talking about these, we first off have to look at a couple of terms, because there's some terminology that goes along with low light. And this is not going to be the larger low light video, but this is just an initial prepper to the handgun stuff. But some terms we have to know is lumen. So lumen is the raw output, the available output of a light itself. So if I have a light and I turn it on, that is how much lumens I am getting. That is the total output of the LED. Next up would be candela. So if lumens are how much output we get, candela is how far away we can put that, right? That is the more focused your beam, the farther that light goes. We're looking at candela versus lumens. Usually higher candela, which we're going to look at here in a second, is much more effective than just a lot of light. The next one's going to be spill. Spill is the light you get. So you have like this hot spot in the middle of your light, and then you have this other part, this kind of like secondary lighting that's taking place away from the main focused beam. That is your spill. Throw would be the light going downrange, right? So if I'm at 50 yards and I can spotlight you at 50 yards, that light is throwing that light at 50 yards. The next one is going to be photonic barriers. How do I describe this in a way that makes total clear sense? Okay, so photonic barriers. The best way I can describe this to you is, have you ever been outside or been looking at your phone and you've had bright light, kind of like hitting your face, and your stuff was kind of hard to see, but the second you blocked that light off, you were able to see more clearly in front of you? That is because your eyes, your rods and cones in your eyes, are constantly taking in photons, right? That's how we see. That's light. So when you have a light that is producing photons and you are trying to throw your light past that, it is very hard for your eyes to discern this, to disregard this input and just focus on what we're trying to get to see. You see it a lot with thermals. If you have thermals and like you have people around a campfire and you put people on the opposite side of the campfire that you're on and you use your thermal, being able to tell me how many people are sitting on the other side of that after to look through that fire, very, very hard, if not impossible. So that is your photonic barriers. And the last one would be light temperature. So you hear this referred to a lot, or the Kelvin scale. Higher numbers on that are going to be a cooler temperature light. You will hear it referred to that. Cool temp lights are a more bluish white color. And then we have things that are lower as we get down to that 5K, 57, 56. That would be considered to be a warmer toned light. You will see it as the light is a much more yellowish orange color, not as blue of a white color. And those actually have real things that matter. So some notes on the light temperature. If we look at a warmer light, have you ever been outside and you see that really, really crappy, cheap, like yellowish orange street light glow, right? That is known as low pressure sodium. So that is one of the cheapest lights we can make. You typically see them in like supermarket, stuff. But if you go to like a car lot, they use what's known as like an aluminum halide, which is a very cool light color. And it provides much more natural color of what you see around you. But there are some pros and cons when we talk about kind of light color, which we'll get to in just a second. So first off, we have a handgun, and we have a handheld, right? These are the two options that we have for low light on an everyday carry basis. Which one? Both. Short answer, man. Both. These, for me, a weapon mounted light is almost mandatory. If the gun will take it, it is mandatory. But a handheld light is non-negotiable. I have to have a handheld light on me at all times. And one of the big reasons for that is we don't need to point this at people that don't need it pointing at them when we just need to see what they're doing, right? So you don't go to jail if you do this with a handheld light, but you absolutely go to jail if you do this with your pistol light, because you just pointed a firearm at something that didn't need a firearm pointed at them. So, short side note, gun owners have a duty and a responsibility to not be the thing that makes other people unsafe, right? We would all agree if you're carrying a firearm on a daily basis, you are kind of someone that views yourself as a protector of innocence, whatever. If you are the reason that people are more unsafe because you are shining your weapon mounted light at them and they don't need a gun pointed at them at that time, wrong. Shame, right? We have a duty and a responsibility to not be that thing as gun owners. I see it sometimes from law enforcement, and it just makes me cringe because be better. So are weapon mounted lights for everyone? Maybe. Gets dark every single day. And as I said a minute ago, I can find terrible lighting where I can't actually see what's going on, even in well-lit days in like a shopping mall. It can happen. But the difference is, this is not a search light. Unless I am clearing a building because there is a likelihood of a threat that might need the gun part of this equation, I am not going to search using my pistol light. I am going to search using my handheld, right? And there's nothing that says the gun can't be out, and I'm searching with my handheld, looking for what's going on, and then maybe I need to engage, and now I just flip this light out of my way and I engage. Weapon-mounted lights are not for searching or for administrative tasks. That's what you have a handheld for. I hear this argument a lot, which is, and this is really common in law enforcement, which is, you got to have night sights on your pistol. I covered this a little bit in the red dot video. Night sights work only in mesopic lighting, which is I guess that's a term I should have gone with. Mesopic lighting is twilight. It is the time of day in which you're driving your car home and it seems a little dark and you cut your headlights on and you don't know if you cut them on or not because it doesn't do anything. That would be mesopic lighting. That is your brain trying to differentiate whether or not it's still bright enough to see or if you need light. Consequently, that is the only place where night sights actually are effective, because there's still enough light for me to see and positively ID things, and the little glowing spots are helpful. They're also very useful for finding your gun if it's on your nightstand. But here's the thing. If let's get one with so if I have night sights on this, the second I do that, my night sights are completely useless because they're no longer lit up, because they're not powerful enough to be seen through the wall of light I have just put down range. So now let's talk a little bit about color temperature, because for the most part, the vast majority of my lights are going to fall in a more neutral, maybe slightly cooler, but and then slightly warmer than like the middle ground for lights. And the reason being is because different types of lights create different photonic barriers, and they also give me different information. If I am using a light that is an incredibly high Kelvin rating, it is a very cool colored light, a colder tone of light, I will lose contrast and shadows, and it's a much more unnatural looking light when I hit somebody with it, and I can actually wash out the thing I'm trying to see. Whereas if I use something like this guy, so this is a Cloud Defensive MCH Duty, this is a warmer light. It's a much more yellow or warmer light. I get a much more natural look when I hit somebody with this, right? I can see shadows. I have better contrast. But the thing we have to remember when we start talking about lights is if I have the really crappy, like low pressure sodium light, and there's a dude in the shadows just beyond the low pressure sodium light, that dude's really in the dark because my eyes are having to take in this like photonic wash from the terrible orange light and not necessarily what's behind it. So if I don't have a light that has enough punch to push through that light, to get the photons beyond that light, to take priority for my eyes to see what's beyond it, I can't ID that, which is dangerous. You will also see those little yellow street lights are pretty notorious. If you want a fun game, Go out in your neighborhood where you've got one of those really terrible low pressure sodium lights, have somebody stand on the other side of it and take your standard everyday carry light like this 500 lumen Surefire and try to PID behind that, through that light into the shadows behind. Odds are you will find you cannot, because that orangey color light just absorbs your photons coming through. Your light color can't get through it. It's a real thing. It happens. We're going to go way in depth into this in the low light video. I think it's going to be a 3-part series. We'll break it up into some basic skills, techniques. We'll do the scientific-y part of it, and then we'll do practical application, which will be really fun for you guys to watch. So what are some lights that I love, that I run because I put my money where my mouth is? Everything that can take a weapon-mounted light gets a weapon-mounted light, because that is how I like to do things. So for slimline guns, right? So this would be this guy. This is my Glock 48. I run the TLR 7 sub. Now the TLR, I'm waiting because I feel like they're going to make an HLX version of this that's got the longer head with more candela. But for an everyday light, like if this is what I was carrying, right, I have good activation, good switchology, because this matters, right? The interface on how you operate a light really matters. The original TLR 7 had a side push-in button up here. It was awful, right? You actually had to break your grip to hit this at the right angle. But good switchology matters. Kind of the kings of some of this, like Streamlight makes really, really good switches. The Surefire switches, once you're used to them, are very good. Mod Light switches are very good. We're going to talk about Mod Light switches in a minute. But this TLR 7 sub is kind of my jam. 500 lumens and about 5,000 candela. That is not a lot of candela. I will tell you, if I was facing off against a vehicle who had their headlights on, pointed at me, and I knew the person to be a threat inside of the vehicle, and I went like this with my light does not have enough horsepower to get through that oncoming light and let me see inside of the car. Also doesn't have the power to get through tint. It just doesn't have enough throw for that, or enough candela horsepower to get through that. But on a very tiny gun that I would be carrying all the time anyway, this is an effective tool, and since I'm always carrying a handheld, I can punch through with my handheld. So what about compact lights, right? Glock 19 size. Everybody's favorite thing is this like very flush look we get for lights. So this is the TLR 7A. This is the modernized version of the TLR 7 I spoke of with the terrible switching, and we have high and low switch capability on this. Hold it down for momentary, click it once for constant on. Same switching as this sub. It's an excellent light. And again, we're talking 500 lumens and about 5,000 candela. So the same problems I have with the TLR 7 sub, I have with the 7A. Now, there is the new HLX version. The new HLX version of this is 1,000 lumens at 22,000 candela. That changes the game. That's duty territory. That is absolutely duty grade territory. This, as it sits, is not a duty light. This is not something you should be running if your lifestyle is that of I carry a gun professionally. This is not a duty light. However, the new HLX definitely is with those specs. If you want more info on the new HLX, Works Holsters just did their thing on it. Fantastic. And then we go to duty lights. So in duty lights, there are really 3 companies that exist in the duty light world. Yes, I know Holosun makes the PID, and there's a nightstick and a goon beam. And I don't have the goon beam one, though goon beam stuff is pretty good, but it's a very cold light temperature. But what are we talking about for duty lights? Well, probably one of the most ubiquitous ones, this is my Glock 19, is the TLR 1HL. So what I've got here is 1,000 lumens, 20,000 candela. That is a really solid middle ground. I have enough punch to get out and actually cut through headlights, photonic barriers, window tint, very dark corners where I have competing photons like coming through a window, like if I'm in a basement. I can really see things very well with the TLR1. It's also very durable, and it has some of the best switching on the planet, which is down if I'm a righty is momentary, up is constant, on it's reversed if you're a lefty. I will say that, well, I'll get to that in a second. That's a fantastic light, right? That is a good quality light, but this performance is being matched by the new 7 HLX, which makes me wonder if we're going to see a TLR1 HLX with 40 or 50,000 candela. Now that would be cool. Next up for me is going to be the U-Boat, the venerable Surefire X300 Ultra, the 1,000 lumen wall of light. But this only has 11,300 candela. This light lacks the ability to punch through some of those crazier photonic barriers. It is also all but worthless beyond about 35 yards. You are not going to get the clarity downrange to let you know if what you're seeing that dude's got in his hand as he's being aggressively stanced and he's screaming at you is a gun or not. That's the difference between should I shoot or should I not, right? So this, though, is very, very useful for a specific feature. So if I was on an entry team and I was not expected to be out where I could have a 50-yard scenario where I needed the light to get 50 yards, but I was just talking about working inside of a house, inside of a school, but even a school, I would argue, because hallways are long, having 1,000 lumen wall of light is pretty freaking awesome. It's also very good if we're clearing a building and I can go up here and umbrella light. It casts a lot of light down for me to see. It's got a much shorter reflector depth into it, which is the reason I don't have that throw. Surefire has a different set of switching, though. So in Surefire, if I push in, straight in, I get momentary, and I have constant on either direction. Now, what I will do with mine, and I will tell people this all the time as we get to the next light for me, which is the X300 Turbo. So the X300 Turbo changes the game. Now we have 650 lumens, but 66,000 candela. I have a very, very focused, tight beam. The way I will operate this light, though, is as I present out, I will lock it down. So it's constant on. Boom, boom, doom, boom, do my shooting, roll my finger up, knock that light off. Constant on, roll it up, knock that light off. Everything's momentary if you turn it off when you're done shooting. So for me, momentary is not necessarily a deal breaker, but this light has been awesome. It takes disposable batteries or rechargeable CR123s. It's great. Even at like 90 and 100 yards, I can get really good ID on things using this light. And something people seem to have a problem with lights is they talk about their pistol light. Like, oh yeah, I could see exactly what I was shooting at on the range at like 50 yards. Right. But now I'm going to tell you, you're not shooting a target that's white. Right. Now we're shooting somebody in a black t-shirt or a flannel shirt with varying lighting conditions, not a pitch black dark range. Now we have like a street light that's casting a shadow over here. He's wearing something that's not exactly visible. You are not hitting anything at like 40 yards using an X300 Ultra. You're just not doing it, but you can with a turbo. And then that brings me to the Hulse. Like, this thing's a Hulse, man. So this is my Mod Light PL350 G2. So this is the second version of it where they fixed the switching. There are two versions of this light. This is the OKW head. There is also a PLHV2 head. There's also the compact version. I don't have that in hands yet, so I won't talk about it, but it looks really cool. So what I have with the Mod Light is I have probably some of the best switches ever. Like, oh, sexy. Like, that sounds so good, doesn't it? And what I will do with this one is I will come out, engage the light, roll my finger up to turn it off after I'm done doing the shooting part, right? This has the OKW head. So what am I looking at with the OKW head? 680 lumens, 69,000 candela. This is one of my handheld lights. This is an 18650 OKW. This is 680 lumens at 69,000 candela. These have the exact same everything. Huh. A pistol light with 18650 performance. This does run on an 18350. Does not have the longest run time, but my God, it chunks, man. So then after that, you would have the PLHV2. You can buy the head, just swap them on and off. PLHV2 is a much more universal. It is very akin to the Cloud MCH Duty. 1,350 lumens on that guy, 54,000 candela. That is a beautiful, well-rounded pistol light for people that could be inside of a structure and need to bounce light, but they also may need to throw light way down range to see something. This guy is 1,800 lumens and 50,000 candela. So the PLHV2 is a very, very solid option. But I told you that handhelds are a priority, right? You have to have a handheld, even if I can't run a weapon-mounted light. Now, why wouldn't you run a weapon-mounted light, Freedom? So I love this little gun here. This is my Gen 4 Glock 26, the only Glock I have that's USA made because it's tiny. But this little gun doesn't have a light rail. I wish they'd fixed that. In the newest freaking generation of it, the Gen 5 gave me like a freaking light rail and an MOS cut, because this would be the coolest freaking gun. It's a chunky little brick, but I shoot this thing so well. It's awesome. But I don't have the ability to run a light on this gun, which is a problem. But if you will notice, my handhelds all run the Therm switchback. So let's take this MCH Duty for example. Let's say I'm searching, I'm doing my thing. If I come up here, I don't neck index, I come up in temple index, so it allows me to throw the light down the slide itself and out, right? So I can see I'm getting those things in alignment. I'm getting my eyes, sights, and light all in alignment so I can see downrange. I like it up here because if I do it in neck, I throw a massive shadow over here. If I come up to my head, I don't really do that. But what I can do with this is if I'm searching, doing my thing here, and I need to engage in a much more standardized fashion, I can flip this guy around. I can make my grip, and I can use my thumb on this lever here to activate this light, and I have almost an uncompromised grip. It's not as good, but it's pretty close when using that. So I love this guy. Again, this is the MCH Duty from Cloud, 1800 lumens, 50,000 candela, awesome all-around light. I use this at work as well. Same deal, we got the same two light heads from Lowlight, PLHV2 at 1350 lumens, 54,000 candela, or the OKW at 69,000 candela, 680 lumens. This OKW is one of my favorite lights. Even like 80 yards, I can just pinpoint things with this. It's awesome. It is a fantastic freaking light. But you can't always carry those lights. And one of the things I see is people like, oh, this is my light. This is a fantastic light. This is the EDC L1T. It's one of my favorite EDC lights because I have a gas pedal switch with 5 lumens, 500 lumens, right? Harder I press, the more lumens I get, which means in a high stress environment, I'm just all of the lumens, right? There's not a second mode, nothing. Cool light. 500 lumens at 7,600 candela. So I actually have a little bit better output and throw than I would with the TLR7 sub. So this is a fantastic light for that. But now I'm going to tell you one that isn't. So I have a buddy, Officer Meatyhead. He typically would run the Tactician from Surefire. Tactician is an 800 lumen light with a very much similar, you push hard and it's on. But it only has 3,200 lumens because the way that is designed, it's the max vision head. It is designed much the way the Ultra is. Big giant wall of light out in front of you. We're not really thinking about throw. We're talking about controlling somebody up front. So that is the primer. Those are the lights I used. I literally showed you lights attached to my handguns. From the sub on a 48 to the TLR1 on anything that will accept it, to the 7A, the 7HLX, to an X300 Turbo, a Lowlight TL350, or mounting up an X300U. For me, the use case is going to dictate kind of the light I'm going to choose, and sometimes I am limited, like with this guy. I have to use the light that will fit within that confines, and sometimes I can't carry a light at all, and if that's the case, my handheld light will never be something like this little guy. It will always be something with a therm switchback that I can use and get really, really solid throw. Because here's the deal with light. We can jack people up with light, right? If I'm walking and you're doing something bad, if it's dark and I'm walking in a place that's pretty dark, I already have this in my hand. This is what it is, right? If I see you and I'm like, hey, what are you doing, right? Odds are, bad guys usually associate lights with cops and they don't really want to do that because that's pretty much a guaranteed go to jail thing. Even if you're not a cop, they don't want to mess with that. Also, the simple act of you shining a light at somebody lets me know like, hey, dude, I know you're there. I'm paying attention to you, right? And if I were to need to draw my firearm, I can still draw my firearm, and then get this light out of my way and then just run my weapon light. And then after I'm done engaging, maybe he had a buddy, I can still control this guy with light and look around with my handheld. So many options, so much stuff. The whole video on Lowlight's going to be fun. But I wanted to talk about lights for the discerning handgunner, the ones that I like the most, and why I use what I do. So hopefully you found this entertaining. Maybe this helped you make some decisions or at least gave you some cool stuff to think about. As always, guys, if you're looking to support me, link in the description box. Can't go wrong. I appreciate it every time one of you guys uses those links. It does help the channel. So take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Until next time, I'll see you later.